And hello everyone, this is PK Yugioh. Welcome back to the channel. So today, I am very excited. I have another deck profile for you. This is Kashtira. So Kashtira is a deck that was released in Darkwing Blast, but with the release of Photon Hypernova, they get a buttload of new support and a lot of really good support, which has vaulted them into competitive status. Now some of you probably already know Kashtira has gotten a little bit of hype recently. Unfortunately, no, this list is not playing Mushroom Man number 2. This is a list that I've taken to locals a little bit. It's gone through a few iterations. Last locals I went, I think 2-2. I beat a Tirlament and a Kashtira player. No, I beat a Tirlament and a branded player, and then I lost to a Kashtira mirror and another Tirlament player. So this deck is really fun. It's arguably a little bit linear, but I'm having a lot of fun with the combos, and it's a very popular deck on my locals. So I'm going to split this profile up into two parts. So the first video here is just going to be an explanation of the deck, the main, the extra, and the side. And then in the second video, I'm going to go over some combos and some test hands, like I did with the Naturia build. And if you haven't seen that, please check out the channel. So, without any further ado, we're going to get started. So we're going to start off with the monsters. We play, obviously, 3 Kashtira Fenrir. And you guys probably already know this card, the TCG. If you don't know what it does, if you control no monsters, you can just special summon it from your hand. Once per turn, you can add a Kashtira monster from your deck to your hand. That includes himself. And then when he declares an attack, or if the opponent activates a monster effect, you can target a basic card your opponent controls and banish it face down. This effect is a spell speed 1 trigger effect, so it activates on resolution, which can kind of complicate certain things, right? If you dark hold, you can't chain, and like if you activate, that's, I don't know, like fucking Black Rose, right? You can't chain the Fenrir and banish a card. But sometimes it's better than you'd think, right? If they activate, say, Shiren, and pitch a card, right? And they mill 3, you can then go Fenrir and banish that Shiren. You couldn't do that if Fenrir was a quick effect. And then, now Fenrir's a really good standalone card. It's probably the best standalone card in the deck. But the best card in the deck, I think, is this one, Kashtira Unicorn. So Unicorn has a similar effect to Fenrir, right? If you control no monsters, just special summon them. He searches Kashtira's spells, and when he declares attack, or if the opponent activates a monster effect, you can look at your opponent's extra deck and then banish 1 card from it face down. Unicorn has a distinct advantage over Fenrir in that, number 1, it's stronger, 25 to Fenrir 24. But more importantly, though, Unicorn's effect can trigger and banish cards face down, even if the opponent doesn't have anything face up, right? Even if the opponent has no board presence, you can still just look at the opponent's extra deck and snap a card out of it. And that can be very useful, especially in the Kashtira mirror match, where the extra deck is very important. There's actually an argument to play multiple copies of certain key cards in your extra deck, right? Even more than you might normally, because if you play multiple copies, then Unicorn can't snipe them out. The next card we have, this is a new card from Photon Hypernova. This is Kashtira Rise Heart. So Kashtira Rise Heart, this is the heart monster, like Tirlament's Rhino Heart. This is Rise Heart. I know it's confusing. So Rise Heart says if you control a Kashtira monster, you can special summon it from your hand, and then you're locked into Xyz for the rest of the turn. During the turn he's normal or special summon, you can banish a Kashtira card from your deck as cost, banish the top 3 cards of your opponent's deck face down, and if you do, it becomes level 7. Now, in non-Kashtira decks, when you summon Fenrir, you're going to search Fenrir. When you play Kashtira, you're going to use Fenrir and search this guy. This is actually the reason why, if you don't know why people play Mushroom Man, because he's a warrior, so you can search him out with Rhoda if you choose to play that. Next, the last card is one Kashtira Ogre. Ogre is optional. Personally, I really like him. This Ogre searches traps to Unicorn spells and Fenrir's monsters. When he declares attack or the opponent activates a monster effect, I look at the top 5 cards of my opponent's deck and then banish one of them face down, and then put the rest on top of the deck in the same order. So you can kind of stack the deck with this. Ogre also has the same advantage with Unicorn in that I can still banish cards even if my opponent doesn't have like anything worth banishing face down. But he is optional. He searches the weakest kind of card type in the game, but he makes up for that by being really huge. He's 2800 attack. And then this is just the last extender. This is Scareclaw Kashtira. So Scareclaw Kashtira says during either player's main phase, you can special summon from your hand, and if you do, banish a Kashtira card from your hand or graveyard. He can attack while he's in defense position, and if you do, apply his defense for damage calculation. And he negates the effects of any monster that battles a Kashtira or Scareclaw monster until the end of the turn. This card, surprisingly, is The negation effect can sometimes come up, right? Sometimes you just want to go battle phase, attack a opponent's monster, just to negate the effects, and then main phase do your whole combo. He's really good because he can get a lot of, because he can make use of already burned Kashtira cards, right? Sometimes you want to banish these things because you can get them back later. But yeah, if you don't want to place, the other counterpart to this is Kashtira-la. Let me see if I have a copy. Give me 1 second. Here we go. So that is the other option you can play instead of or alongside Kashtira Scareclaw. They're just extenders. If you don't know what she does, when she's summoned, has the same summoning effect as Kashtira Scareclaw, but you banish a gentleman card instead. If she's summoned, you can move the top 3 cards of the player's deck, which doesn't really matter too much. The reason why I play this card is just because it's bigger, right? It's bigger and it has more utility just for killing stuff. You don't really want cards in the graveyard with Kashtira. So those are the main, those are all the main Kashtira cards. The rest are just hand traps. We got 3 Ash and 2 D-Shifter. D-Shifter's at 2 in the OCG, which is why I'm only playing 2. The other alternative, if you can play, and I really want to put this in, is Ghost Mourner. Ghost Mourner is an option for this deck to play because, well, for a few reasons. Number one, it's a level 3 tuner. So you can, and all the Kashtira are level 7, so you can just normal summon this, and you can make a Baron, because, yeah, we are playing Baron. The other reason why you might want to play this card is because, because the question is, why this thing and why not, like, Effect Veiler, right? The reason for that is because Ghost Mourner can trigger 1 on your turn, right? So you can just discard this when your opponent, like, plays Chillmans and decides to play in your turn. And it doesn't have to be sent to the graveyard. It discards itself as cost. So if you are under a D-Shifter, or you can't send cards to the graveyard, and we'll get to why you can't in a minute, you can still activate Ghost Mourner. You can't do that with Effect Veiler, right? I could D-Shifter my opponent, and if they try to negate my stuff by summoning a monster, let's say something kick Cows somehow, right? I can still Ghost Mourner them. Unfortunately, I did not have the space, but I want to put it in. This is a commonly seen card in other Kashtira builds, so it's not as gimmicky as you might think. And then because it is the OCG, we are on 3 max Cs, of course. So that does it for the monsters. Next, we're going to go into the spells. Okay, so now we're into spells. You kind of got a glimpse of this earlier, but this is the Kashtira field spell. This is Prime Planet Parizos. Yeah, I'm trying to say that 3 times fast. So you can only activate 1 per turn, and you can only use the 3rd effect of this card once per turn. When it's activated, you can add a Kashtira monster from deck to hand. Duh. All monsters you control gain 100 attack and defense for each monster, each different attribute on the field. So at most, they gain 600. And then once per turn, if you activate the effect of Kashtira Shangri-La, you can target 1 card in the field and destroy it. Shangri-La is a card in the action deck. We'll get into that in a little bit. I don't think I need to explain just how good this card is. And then because it's so good, we are playing with Terraforming. Next, we have 3 Kashtira Papias. So if you don't know what this card does, this is a new card from Photon Hypernova. Target a Kashtira monster you control, summon a Kashtira from your deck with a different attribute in defense position, and then you're locked into Xyz for the rest of the turn. If this card is banished, you can target one of your banished Kashtira cards except for Papias, add it back to your hand. So this is what I was alluding to with why Scareclaw Kashtira is so good, right? Because if I have this in hand and I have a Papias, I can like activate Papias, target my Kashtiras, right? This goes to grave, and then later in the turn, I can activate Kashtira Scareclaw, banish the Papias, summon this, and then use Papias effect trigger and get a card back. So, yeah, this card is amazing. It's unfortunate if you see it, but you don't see, another Kashtira card, because sometimes that does happen. And then, going on, next we have Kashtira Birth. This is a card from Darkwind Quest. There's 3 different effects. Once per turn, you can normal summon a level 7 monster without tributing. That comes up a lot more than you would think. Once per turn, you can special summon a Kashtira monster that is in your graveyard or banished, except an Xyz monster that doesn't target. And the 3rd effect is, if you control a Kashtira monster, I think it's Kashtira or Visa Starfrost. Nope, just Kashtira. And your opponent activates a spell card or effect, target 3 cards in your opponent's graveyard, banish them face down. That generally will not happen, but sometimes it can, especially if you're going second. This card is amazing. This card is crazy good. Unicorn, generally speaking, will search Papias, but there's also sometimes a valid argument for you to search Birth instead. yeah, Birth is really good. It's really good for combo extending, and in the next part, I will show you how to use Kashtira Birth. Next are just staple cards. Two Raigeki, because at least in my locals, a lot of players with big boards. So I actually lost to, Kashtira is kind of weak to board breakers. So actually, I beat a Chilling player with this because I de-shifted him. He was able to like get the Kaleido Heart, drag us to Pelia, and what was it? I think there's something else, Lulu Kalos. And then I just Raigeki'd him and he scooped. So that was pretty funny. I would say, you could probably side this if you really wanted to, but something came up for me. This next one is, I do main deck Dark Ruler, 2 Dark Ruler no mores. This is mainly because the first time I took this deck to locals, I got blown out by Therians of all things, because they made a board of monster negates and I just couldn't deal with it. Right, Kashtira can kind of struggle to go second, so that's why I am playing going second cards. All right, I can Dark Ruler the board and then break it. And if I can get the Kashtira end board, it's really hard for the opponent to play through that. Then 1 triple tactics talent because I have the space, and then 2 called by because it's the OCG, and 1 cross out. So that does it for the spells. Moving into the trap cards, we have 1 Kashtira Preparation. So card from Darkwind Blast. So during either player's turn, once per turn, you can summon a Kashtira from your hand or that's banished or stuffed an Exceeds monster. And then if you control a Kashtira monster and your opponent activates a trap card, and this card is face up in the spawn trap zone already, yeah, it's a big condition. Look at your opponent's hand and then banish 1 card from it face down. I've never done that. I do like this card mainly because if you can get like a setup with Preparation, Birth, you just get guys back all the time, and just a constant cycling of resources is very difficult for the opponent to deal with. Preparation, I do think is optional. Same with Ogre. If you don't play one without the other. If you're gonna cut Preparation, then cut the Ogre, or vice versa. But I wanted to play Preparation. I like this card a lot. But the other cards that are necessary are, first, Kashtira Big Bang. This is a card from Photon Hypernova. If you control a Kashtira Exceeds monster, you can make both players banish monsters they control face down until they each control only 1 monster. That's nice. Doesn't really come up. If you're activating that, you're probably losing. The other effect that's more important though is if this card is banished, you can target a Kashtira Exceeds monster you control, add 1 Kashtira monster attached to it as material back to your hand, then you can special summon it. So in the main combo with Kashtira, you are supposed to banish this, get a material out from under one of your Exceeds monsters, and then get it back on the board to make another Exceeds monster. Yeah, this card is really good. You could play 2, right? Kind of like, it is a Garnet, so there's an argument to playing 2, but I've personally not bricked on it very much, so that's why I only played 1. And then the last 3 cards are 3 Impermanence. Impermanence is useful, especially against Kashtira, because you can negate everything. 2 things. Number one, it negates the entire effects of all the effects of the Kashtira monsters, so they can't banish cards face down. And even if they have a second Kashtira, right, because Impermanence is a trap card, you can still negate the effects and they can't do anything, right? And they won't be able to trigger the other Kashtira monster and banish other cards. So yeah, Impermanence is really good this format. So that is for the spells and traps and monsters. That's it for the main deck. I think we have a 42 card main deck. Now going into the extra, we have these are the other cards that are necessary. We have 2 Kashtira Shangri-La. So Kashtira Shangri-La, card from Darkwind Blast. During the standby phase, once per turn, you can summon a Kashtira from your deck. It's really freaking good. Each time a card that is owned by your opponent is banished face down, you can select an unused spell and trap or main monster zone. While this card is on the field, that zone can't be used. That's an ignition effect. Sorry, a trigger effect. That's a trigger effect, which means that once it's already resolved and it's locked to zone, even if you negate this with Impermanence or you negate it with like a Dark Ruler no more, the zones stay locked. And I mean, the Kashtira end goal is to lock 5 zones. If you can lock all of the monster zones, or like all the back row, depending on the deck, you just win the game. And you can threaten that by turn 2 with the right setup. And of course, if you destroy by battle a card effect, you can attach return from it instead. Next, which is the card from Photon Hypernova, which is really freaking good, is Kashtira a Rise Heart. Yeah, there's Rise Heart in the main deck, and then there's a Rise Heart in the extra, and that's confusing. So, he is a walking macrocosmos. So once per turn, if the effect of Kashtira Shangri-La has been activated, you can exceed some of this card by using a Kashtira monster you control as material. Walking Macrocosmos, as I said earlier, once per chain, each type of card is banished. Attach one banished card to this card as material. That's a mandatory effect. And the last effect is, during the player's turn, once per turn, you can detach 3 materials from this card, target a card on the field, banish it face down. So, one of the funny things about this is if you have 3 materials under a Rise Heart, you activate its effect, you detach the 3. They're all going to get banished under his effect. You banish a card face down, and then he's going to trigger, and then attach, and then get one of the materials back. So, this card is really good. I would also say, just giving you a heads up for the upcoming format when Photon Hypernova drops, get this card, even if you're not choosing to play Kashtira, because you can make this thing even if you do not play any of the casters except for Fenrir, because you can exceed summon it so long as the effect of Kashtira Shangri-La is activated. It does not have to be yours. So if your opponent has a Shangri-La and they summon a Kashtira, you can summon a Fenrir, make this thing for free. So some decks in the OCG do play just one copy of this, even if they don't have any other Kashtiras, or I guess if like Fenrir, because if they're expected to go against Kashtiras and your opponent's got a Shangri-La, you just slap this bad boy down. So, and then the last mandatory card, you do need this card in the extra deck, is Diabolosis. Yeah, Diabolosis is really freaking good. Banishing cards to the extra deck face down, banishing cards to the top of the deck face down. The main combo for this deck is going to make both of these off of one card, and I'll show that in the next video. You do need at least one copy of this card. Some decks play multiple, so that it doesn't get sniped out with Unicorn, and you can just make more, and you just keep banishing cards out of the extra deck. I'm choosing not to do that because this card is like 20 bucks, which is expensive by OCG standards, and I don't want to do that. The rest of the extra deck is really just like up to you. A lot of tech choices. So we do have one Big Eye. Big Eye does come up. You know, you can steal like Shangri-La, steal the Rise Hearts, and that's always really fun. One Dark Arm, the Dragon of Annihilation. So Dark Arm is kind of like Draco Sack. Attach material, target a card your opponent controls, destroy it, then banish a card from your graveyard, and then he can't attack. The main advantage of this thing is, number one, banishes cards out of your graveyard. So if you have like a Poppius in grave or something, you can banish it and then get its effects and get more banished cards back. And it's not once per turn. So you can detach 2 materials, pop 2 cards, banish 2 cards from your graveyard, and get a good amount of advantage back. Next is Draco Sack. We do play Draco Sack. Draco Sack, I did make it once. The fact that it tributes itself makes it useful, so you can play it under a Rise Heart, you can play it under Dimension Shifter. I actually once made the Draco Sack, summoned 2 tokens, and then sacked the 2 tokens off to normal Unicorn. Because I had to do that. That was pretty funny. But Draco Sack doesn't come up too often, but having the spot removal is very useful. They have one of this card. This is Volnagesh. I don't know what it's called in the TCG. The name will be on screen. So if you don't know what he does, you can detach 2 materials from this card, target a card on the field, destroy it. Then, if you destroy a monster, you can make one monster you control gain attack equal to that monster's level or rank times 300 until the end of the turn. He can't attack that turn. Now, this card is not necessary in the TCG, I think. The reason why I play this card is because in the OCG, because Galaxy Tomahawk is still legal, there are certain Kashtira combos that let them end with a 4K Arrival Cybers adding Nister. Volnagesh is able to target itself and blow itself up, give any monster 2100 attack. So any Kashtira then goes up to over 4K, which is enough to punch over the Arrival Cybers. Sometimes just use him just to make a really big guy and punch a lot of damage. That's the whole purpose, the whole reason why we play this card. But again, that's only because some decks can make just a giant body that you can't normally deal with. I did make him once, not against the Arrival Cybers, but just to try to really push for game. I got my opponent at 100 life points, and then made the last rank 7 in the deck, Flare Metal. Flare Metal is just kind of like Cowboy for this deck, right? You can get them down to, what, like 500, 600 life points, just make this thing and just pass, right? And you just won the game at that point, right? If you're just this close to game, slap down the Flare Metal, and then your opponent loses, basically. And then, of course, Zeus, we have all these Xyz monsters with huge stat lines. In theory, it'd be really good to have like a Rise Heart because it accumulates so many materials and then just slap a Zeus on top of that, but I've never done that. Usually Zeus is the card that gets banished out of the extra deck whenever I go up against Kashtira. That's because if this is able to stick and nuke the board, you've basically won the mirror. Then the last few cards in the extra deck, we do have one Barone. I kind of threw this in last minute because I do play Ash Blossom, and I mean I guess in a pinch, just know the Ash plus Unicorn make this thing. Kashtira does not, if you've noticed, Kashtira does not have any negation, so this is really it. If you choose to play more Ghost Girls, especially like Ghost Mourner, I could definitely see an argument for Barone. I've also seen players play Chengying, because Kashtira are banishing cards constantly. The only reason I'd say maybe not to play Chengying is because you can't really use this effect because you ideally won't have any cards in the graveyard or have very few cards in the graveyard. But at the same time, because you're banishing so much stuff, I mean, Chengying gets huge. So, and the last three cards, one Almirage. Almirage is for card in the side deck. Alsa is probably the best Link Charmer right now because Fenrir is an Earth, right? So you can make this thing, use this effect, get a Fenrir to your side of the field, and then you search your entire deck. And then one Kit Kalos because we are on a Reaper package. So, next we're going to go into the side deck. So, with the side deck that I took to my locals, we first, friend keyed me into this, 3 Ibli. So, why Ibli? Ibli is for the Kashtira mirror match. This is function under the similar idea to Mushroom Man number 2. Basically, if you link off Ibli for Almirage, you can give it to the opponent, and then they can't do their Kashtira plays. They can't summon anything except for link monsters. So they have to link it off somehow or crash, right? But it's kind of hard to do, right? Because you can just summon all your monsters in defense, and then Ibli can't crash them, and then you can just kill Ibli on the next turn. Unfortunately, I never got to pull this off, but it was an option that a friend of mine keyed me into. Also, because Ibli turns off other special summons, it also turns off other board breakers. I'm going to show this a little bit early now. It turns off things like Lava Golem. We are playing Lava Golem. Kashtira boards will usually have a Diabolosis plus Shangri-La, which is perfect 2 monsters. Just sack it off some Lava Golem, special Unicorn, and then you can combo off. I have seen players play Sphere mode. The ideal Kashtira end board is to get 3 rank 7s on board, and you just stack them off for Sphere mode. But Lava Golem has other uses, especially against things like Tier Limit. Tier Limit can make some pretty large boards. And because Lava Golem is a special summon, right, Ibli prevents that. The other thing that it prevents is Divincarnation. Curry card Divincarnation. So, what does this card do? This card says it must be special summoned from your hand by tributing every monster that activated in effect in the opponent's main monster zone. It gains 1500 attack for every monster tributed to summon this, and then once per turn during the end phase, you can target a monster in your opponent's graveyard, summon it to your field. Now, as I mentioned earlier, Shangri-La triggers a standby to summon from deck, and a Rise Heart's effect to attach materials activates. So, bare minimum, let's say that your opponent's got a Shangri-La and a Rise Heart, and they've special summoned like a Fenrir, right? You do a combo, right? You go Fenrir effect, banish the card, Shangri-La locks his own, or Rise Heart, gets to another material. You can just, or even just like this, you can just sack off both these guys for Divincarnation, and it comes in at 4500 attack, which is enormous. Now, generally speaking, it's useful to just to out the Rise Heart and the Shangri-La. I could see an argument to not playing it, and I'll get into why that is in the next video. But yeah, because it's also a special summon, Ibli turns that off. I have seen players use this card to deal with Kashtira end boards. If you don't want to play these kinds of monsters, I would also recommend things like Swords of Concealing Light or Book of Eclipse. Book of Eclipse is seen a lot of play because you can activate it in the draw phase and flip the Shangri-La face down before it can summon a monster. And the rest, Twin Twisters and a Feather Duster. This is because Labyrinth is a popular deck in my locals, and I'll go into why Labyrinth is a surprisingly hard matchup for Kashtira. So the reason why Labyrinth is a hard matchup for Kashtira is because all the Kashtira effects are ignition effects. You have to manually activate them in an open game state. So even if you just special summon a Unicorn, your opponent has all this time to activate like Meta Noise, flip it face down, fusion summon Kit Kalos, do a whole Tillaments combo before you can do anything. Especially summon this, activate Compulse, connecting Compulse, bounce it back to hand. You don't get the search, right? Or just banish, you don't get the search with, Ichiroku's Legend Domain. So that is a huge weakness for Kashtira. And well, my first time I brought this deck to locals, I got blown out by Labyrinth. So that's why I'm playing more back row hate. Also, Judgment. This is for going first. And Kashtira doesn't have any negation, so you do kind of need this stuff. Too evenly. It's a board breaker. Kashtira loses to board breakers. Also, this card would have been really useful against the Ethereum player, but unfortunately I didn't draw it. Would have helped out a lot. And the 2 Reaper, because Reaper is useful, especially in my locals, because there's so many Kashtiras, so I'm playing a lot of mirror matches. You just drop this down, reveal like a Rise Heart or Shangri-La, and banish them. And that's also why I'm playing Kit Collis. Tier Limits is also a very popular deck on my locals. So, with that, that is the whole Kashtira deck. So, stay tuned for part 2 of this deck profile, where I'm going to show combos, a few test hands. And yeah, if you enjoyed the video, please like, comment, hit that notification bell, do whatever you do whenever you like a YouTube video. And thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.